referred to in the guidance, which we all know quite well, like the gateways, aren't actually in the legislation, which is quite surprising.
Crikey, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
No, I heard about it on Thursday, and we reviewed it today. But the gateways don't appear in the legislation. They call them something else.
How's everyone? All right. So I'm a bit late.
Dead right. No, nice to see you with a tie on, Paul. Good grief, setting the tone there, sir.
I'll try my best. I've actually can't stay. I've got something else I've got to jump into, so I'm really sorry. It's just like mental today. But was you talking about the key information?
No, we were talking about the difference between legislation and guidance, and how it's becoming more and more noticeable the more you get into it.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I can believe it.
Yeah. Well, the example I was giving was the gateways. I think most people in the industry who've had a dabbling with this know what the gateways are. But I think most people would be shocked, like George was, to find out that they're not actually mentioned in the legislation. The legislation refers to building control application
and planning like and stuff like that. Yeah, it does. It does, mate. So how is everyone? All good? You okay, George?
Yes. I'm a bit like you. I've got to also dive off at 2 because I've got a pre-arranged meeting. But very very busy at the moment. I think a lot of people are very confused.
That's only after 15 minutes of being on this call, Paul.
Yeah.
The best one, you like this, George, the best one we come up recently was we're doing this thing for the industry leaders for the ASFP and PFKG, and I can't take credit for all. It was me and Alex Stubble. We come up with the slogan, I've got 99 problems and the bat ain't one. And it's and it is so true. It's not the 5 bats the issue, it's everything else that sits before it, And the golden, was it the digital records being the golden kipper, if you're not careful. Just a kipper. But yeah, so I can't stay on, unfortunately. I've got to jump into another meeting, but I do want to be too rude. So is anyone at London Build this week?
Nope.
I'm not planning to be, but I have actually been asked this morning as to whether I'm going. So it's possible.
Okay. Well, let us know if you are, George, because I'm there 15th from about 4:30, and I think I'm there on the 16th at about 11 o'clock, something like that. But only for an hour, then I'm out the door again. But let us know if you are.
Yeah. Well, I will do. I was engaged with Ian McKilwee at the weekend, or not the weekend, on Thursday, Friday, because what I'm trying to do at the moment is get some simplified data. And in fact, I was going to ask you, Paul, for the asset types that are, in particular, the Regulation 38 types, I'm really just now trying to see if we can simplify the information that's needed that differentiates between a door and a pump, if that makes sense, just at a very high level. And I've been going through looking at the what we've been creating over the years in BIM and IFC and all that sort of stuff. And actually, from an asset management point of view, there's probably only maybe 2 or 3 things that you need to know about a door that won't be on that would supplement what you have in a data sheet. And I was explaining that to him, to Ian, and Ian sent me back what the Guild of Ironmongers have produced, and I've I've not had the time to finish my reply. I didn't know if Ian was going to be on today, but the level of complexity that they're asking for, and I think most people are asking for, is just too big. And I think we're going to be asking too much of people, and therefore we're not getting anything. Have you got 5 minutes? I'll just show you what that is.
What I found, George, is unless you get it into a workbook guidance like we did with NAD recently with the damper stuff, people just can't process it. And it's really hard with the architectural community because they're really struggling to process any of it.
Yeah. Let me just okay. Right. Well, I've
George, my headphones just stopped working. 1 second.
okay. This is a data sheet out of what we did with the BRE, and all of these values down on the left-hand side there are things that are BIM library elements.
Yeah.
That I think that we built into the template. And what I'm finding is that asking people for things like security rating, even handicap accessible and things like that, this is all information that probably would be in a data sheet. And I'm not trying to dumb things down, but I actually think that asking people for 10 or 15 attributes against something like a door is too much. So what I want to know is, for example, fire rating. I probably do want to know what the fire rating is. I probably do want to know whether it's got a door closer. Yeah, or that one there, isn't it? So the rest of the attributes, maybe the height as well, but the rest of the attributes can be in a data sheet. And I sent this to Ian, and Ian said, well, here's an alternative suggestion. Oops. That's this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is from the Guild of Ironmongers.
Yeah.
And can you imagine who would be filling in this level of detail? There's information on how the thing is constructed or built.
Yeah.
Things about the seals. I'm not saying this information wouldn't be wonderful to have.
It looks a bit like the damper one that I produced. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Right.
But the challenge with that is, a lot of these things could be in a data sheet, which is what they've done here, which is good. But to ask anybody to fill out, let me see, it's 180 values. It's just not going to happen. And I just wanted to share that with you to just say, the thing I've been pushing for, which we're still on the journey with, is having a BIM for housing product library.
Yeah.
Just with data sheets in it. But if we could have the see a lot of this information about manufacturer, the reference, the model number, that's standard COBie information that could be captured across the board. There's nothing special about that that is different for a door as it is for a window or a
Do you remember, Joel? Let me just share my screen quickly. Right, hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
Off that quickly, hold on. Off of that. Oh, I had to get the other thing. Hold on.
But you can see why we get into the weeds so quickly, can't you, Martin? You know, it's because even Ian, who's very knowledgeable, we end up with, you know, potential. The question is, who would fill that in? Because the information is going to come from lots of different people. Yeah, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I think the key with this is you've got to look at the different actors, right, and say to yourself, even with this one here, which is now this has all been published in NADOC, right? Is someone goes through all of this different thing to understand what the risk of the space is, which you all said about space risk, George, right?
Yes.
And that sits away from that, right? Then you fill in the basic requirements of what that functional piece of kit should do.
Yeah.
The issue with doors is going to be very similar to things like pipe work. We have a lot of other things you need to consider in the mix to get yourself to what the condition is for one pipe. So when you think about it, you say, I'm not going into the level of detail this about the type of batter mastic and thing that's been used. That is something which is a response to a designed condition. What I've done is describe the condition in an Excel file and say that's actually what it is, right?
Yeah.
So doors should be no different, right? Is that if you put a door on the schedule and you went, okay, what function is the door performing? Is it a doc M? Is it a part P? So part S? Is it security? Is it part B? Is it? You can list out all the things that door is doing. Then you can look at the space risk of what it's supposed to do. The difference will come is if it's got a security function, someone's got to put down what that security function is. This just goes back to old school door scheduling. When it comes to inserting it in the model, the manufacturer of the door needs to have their model sheet, and we're miles away from this, right? Miles away from it, with all the functionality of the kit. So you can take all of that 100 and something items like I did for dampers, and that's the only bit of information I need, is that bit there. The rest of it comes down to the function of actually some of it's the coordination of the wall, because the bottom line here is describing the right product that you need. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. But if I could just say what you're doing here, you're illustrating exactly where I think the problem is, right? And that is that you're looking at things from a design and an installation and a product selection perspective, right? The other dimension on this is what's needed for asset management.
No, I'm with you. I just don't think that bit is any shape, form, or fashion yet to get it right. And that's what that sheet is telling you. No one's ready to do that yet.
But we could have something simple, which basically said that what do we need to know about a smoke damper that's different to a door, for example.
Which is those two examples. That's the two differences. That one versus that one.
But that's from a design perspective.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, from an asset management perspective, what would I need to know about a smoke damper? Is that there's a fire rating, isn't there? Now, some things are going to have fire ratings and some things aren't. So therefore, maybe I'm being too simplistic here.
No, you're not at all. I think what it is, it's like it's only an asset data nightmare when it comes to changing it for a different product at a later date. That's the bit. That's the bit is the problem.
And if you're going to do that, then that, for me, that kicks into a different workflow. That's about design, because you're actually. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you're just replacing like for like, you're not having to worry about design.
Exactly. No. And when you're replacing like for like, as long as you've got access to the data sheet, yeah, and as long as the data sheet contains what it's supposed to contain, then you've got that, right? But what an asset manager will want to know is which doors are 30-minute doors. Yeah. Which doors have got door closers?
No, I'm with you.
Yeah. And it's at that basic level. And I think we're just overwhelming people with the request for too much information. And I think we need to do it in what one of my guys says, all the time. He says it's baby steps, isn't it? It's to get people down that journey. Because at the end of the day, the client organizations also aren't interested themselves in the detail about how that product was selected. We need to know how it was selected, but and when you replace it for something else, but that would be a different competent person, wouldn't it? At the end of the day, from a general management point of view, you just want to know the basics.
Just for my benefit, George, why do they need to know that? Why do they need to know the basics even? What is it you're trying to achieve? Is it some sort of inventory list for insurance? Is it some sort of, I don't know.
I'm going to have to shoot off, guys. Okay. I'm
No,
really
that's
sorry,
fine,
but,
Paul.
really sorry,
Okay.
guys. All right.
Good
Speak to you
to
later.
see
That's
you.
okay.
You too, mate. Bye bye.
Yeah, under Regulation 38, they have to have a basically that they have to have the data that they need to be able to manage the building safely, and therefore knowing what key assets are installed, where they are, and what systems they're part of. There's some basic things. Now, if we can also record against each asset type a data sheet for that particular item from the manufacturer, and we can also record the basic thing about it, because the thing is with standard Kobe is all it's doing, it's recording manufacturer, model number, warranty, installation date, etc. It doesn't say what it is. All it's doing is giving it that level of detail. So therefore, if we could identify just whether something, most things that are part of wall compartments, for example, have got a fire rating. So therefore, if we could identify within the information requirements the fire rating, that would be an important thing to do. If you've got a pump that's part, or a damper, I don't know if there's a parameter that on a damper that would allow you to target how you're supposed to inspect it, or whatever, without having to go to a data sheet. The data sheet gives you the background information, and I'm thinking we could do this. We could probably, somebody like Paul, or maybe somebody like Callum, one of your colleagues.
Just a second, George. George, we're going to have to go and find another meeting room. So bear with.
Okay. No problem.
Shall I dial? I'll dial back in.
Great. Thank you. Richard? Hello, Richard? Jess, are you there? I'm just going to pop to the loo, actually, just whilst. Sorry. I think Richard's perhaps gone offline for a second. Bear with me a second.
From the data sheet that's required here, is that not an easier way to do this, or is it just, do you need to ask the question again?
No, it could well be an extract from the data sheet, but we don't have, universally, we don't have the data sheets yet.
Am I looking forward here, whereas you're looking back? Are you trying to?
Yeah, I'm looking at where we are at the moment and how we can get something useful, if you like, today. And it's also the case, I'm looking forward. I mean, what, in practical terms, what I think, you know, as a tier one that you've got to do is manage that change management process and technical submittals. I mean, we're now working with several contractors that are going through that exercise, and everybody's got a slightly different process. Yeah, but one thing that should be common is that you need a data sheet for the product that you are that your designers have recommended, that is the baseline to work from. What I'm just trying to do is look at the most practical way of getting that, and it's proving more difficult than I feared. I mean, I recall you saying, a while ago, that's just something that we just require people to do, and I think that would be great if we could do that, but we have to give them a very simple way to follow it through. So therefore, if we could simply ask them to provide a data sheet against a very basic set of information about who the door manufacturer is, the model number, and the absolutely critical information, then that would help.
So is it critical information for reordering purposes?
Yes, yeah, or indeed planning work, maybe doing inspections.
Okay.
In fact, that's probably more.
More harder to pin down, isn't it?
When you're commissioning, when you're doing your handover and inspections and things like that, you'd what would you expect the person that's doing that to feedback as key information about that fire damper?
With the various tests and various performance characteristics, isn't there? For,
yes.
A damper. But you'd be talking about something that was installed and detailed and shown on a drawing, and it was specified. So it was that damper in that room was this type, and that here's the results that have been achieved when it was tested for XYZ.
And those would typically all be individual documents.
Yeah, they'd probably end up in the O&M files.
That have been gathered by different people using different methods, and therefore the opportunities for something to be missing or misclassified are huge.
So you're absolutely right.
So what I'm trying to get to is a simpler way of organizing it so that you can say that there is a specification, and okay, you've probably got a specification that's maybe several hundred pages. You want to be able to record which page or which pages refer to that particular smoke damper, and have that as a record. So in other words, I'm not looking to have everything digital, but just having it referenced properly. The
cross-reference, it's a good place to start, isn't it? The spec. It's a good place to start if you're going to cross-reference it away.
And then have that reference to what was installed, and if there's a drawing for where that is, and make sure that the whatever reference key is on the drawing is on the same. It's referenced in the same way in the schedule that refers back to the spec. And then to be able to record the manufacturer's information, because generally what's in the drawing and what's on the spec isn't manufacturer specific. It's a performance requirement, and even if it is specific, you don't know that's what was actually purchased. Whereas if we can then schedule what actually was installed, with the information about what it's whether it is a 30-minute or a 60-minute device that's been put in, rather than just what the spec was, but what the actual product was, then then so it's a matter of just stitching those things together, which I have to say, one of the problems is that nobody is asking the questions that I'm just asking, because everybody's diving down into more detail, and it's the simple workflow of saying, how does that technical submittal actually reflect back to what actually was installed? I mean, I don't know if there's any of your colleagues that have been on. Is it Peter and that's
Peter and David have made intermittent calls to this one. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if one of those might be able to, whether we could have a chat with one of those or both. What's Peter's role?
Peter is a pacifier inspector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Peter Wright, isn't it?
There's Peter Vasilev.
Oh. Yeah.
And David Wright.
Ah. Yeah. And what does David Wright do?
Similar but active fire.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, they'd be good people to talk to, wouldn't they?
Yeah, obviously. I'm just wondering about things that are nothing to do with fire. Trying to simplify it in my head at the moment. So if you started off at there's the specification. I mean, the specifications of the MBS split it into common sense work groupings, don't they?
Yes.
Can be improved, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah, definitely.
Good starting point. I mean, if they were calling off ceiling tiles within the specification, they would do that, wouldn't they? They would say,
yes,
they'd give you some base information. It might get finessed during a supply chain design agreement, what have you. But in terms of the asset manager coming back and saying, well, I want to replace the ceiling tiles in this room, what the hell are they? If he started off with a specification, he's got a starting point. And then aligned that to your material data sheet again, aren't you? There's no in between, which is what I think you're looking for. So,
yes. But when you say material data sheet, you mean the product data sheet?
Sorry,
yeah. No, agreed.
Yeah, that would be the next step. That's what we used to satisfy that specification clause.
Yes. Yeah, and one of I think one of the challenges is there's a constant reference to other other standards. So, for example, you'd think with a door that you'd be able to get a fire rating, wouldn't you?
Well, not in. Yeah, no. It's a complicated topic in this country, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We measure fire resistance rather than fire ratings. Yeah,
but on the data sheet, it will say fire rating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah. Which it's and that's what for a layperson gets very confusing. I was just gonna. I started to, as I say, explain the difference but you see here, for example, fire rating. Is it resistance to fire, reaction to fire of the, and if you then want to know about it, you've got to go and look at two Whereas actually, you just want to know from, or maybe you just want to know from the manufacturer, what is it? Is it 30 or 60 minute? If you're designing a new one, then that's a different matter, maybe. I mean, I'm as you know, I'm a layperson, so I'm not burdened with proper knowledge. But I'm just asking what I think are practical questions. Hi, Phil.
Yep.
You just
Hello,
joined us.
George and Adi. Sorry, apologies for joining very late. I just realised I didn't send my message earlier to say I'd be joining late.
No
Yeah.
problem.
No problem. Yeah. I'm going to have to. I've got a client meeting at 2:00, so I'm going to have to disappear then. But we're Martin. Could we perhaps have a chat? Maybe set something up for an hour with colleagues.
Can do, George. Just not sure they'll be able to help any more than I could, which wasn't a lot, I know. I think it's easier when you do when you're looking at components that need supply chain design input. Because then you are effectively doing, as you were saying, technical submittals. But for the vast majority of stuff that gets installed into a building, I think we're drawing a blank because we don't do technical submittals. We just react or respond and purchase the stuff that's listed in the spec, so like the ceiling tiles.
Yeah, I think the things I want to concentrate on are the things that are important from a building safety point of view, which it isn't just fire. I agree. It's smoke, it's ventilation, it's structure and things like that. So I think if we could crack it with maybe the items that are needed for Regulation 38, then it would give a context that people can understand, and then they can start to run a little bit further. I think it's getting things started, which sounds frustrating after all the years that we've. I mean, Phil's done a huge amount of work over the years at NG Bailey and with ETIM and GS1 and the like to actually look at things from a classification point of view, but the level of detail that different product types and asset types need is very different for a merchant or a procurement person than it is for a designer or an installer.
If I could just add in there, I appreciate there's a lot of the conversation I missed here, but I do, like George said, I've spent a lot of time wrestling with this problem in the industry. From a procurement perspective or a transactional procurement perspective, there's very little information required by the merchants other than an identifier and the price that's going to be paid, typically on the purchase order. And there's a chasm there in the industry, as far as I'm concerned, as to what is actually being selected. I mean, you made a valid point there, Eddie, about the legitimacy of information where there's a specification or you're working with a manufacturer on a highly complex piece of plant. But as you come down the kind of the scale, as it were, and you get to the lower echelons of products, especially where there's high volume and low value, and there's no real governance in place as far as I can see. But George did mention then safety critical. Now, again, that's an area that I've been keen to highlight because there's lots of safety critical products which fall into that category of low value, say, for instance, fixings. And as far as I can see, the industry is still a wild west with merchants providing pretty much what they want.
Which is a conversation of last month, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's a perennial conversation, unfortunately, because nobody's really dealing with it as far as I can see. The conversations I'm having, everyone's still working at the kind of top of the scale and trying to get complex solutions in place. But what about the basics? That's just sorry for venting a little bit there.
No.
Late, but it's just I'm still seeing this today with the content I'm dealing with.
Yeah. It's still a problem. You're not telling me anything I don't know there, Phil.
Martin, how are
still a
you
problem.
dealing with the change control process now? Do you think you've got that reasonably well cracked?
Not reasonably well cracked. We need to. I was explaining to Richard earlier. We're going to trial it on one of the legacy projects to see how it runs. Equally, we don't think there's anything new there. We think we do change control because it's important to do it from a commercial perspective.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of software out there. Some customers insist on things like CMAR for managing change control. So
how's that spelled?
With a C, EMAR.
CEMAR.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we take the regulator at face value. They wanted to keep this simple. They wanted to build on what people were already doing. I don't think there's nuances to the change control, but change control shouldn't come as a culture shock to people in the industry.
No,
because there's a lot of it goes on.
Well,
logging it properly and keeping digital records, less so, but it can be done.
Yeah, I was talking with. I was on a panel a couple of weeks ago with Scott Sanderson from PLP, and he was explaining to me that on a particular project, they were having to process 12,000 text subs, which
change control could be more. There's always myriad of changes, and involving the regulator and deciding which ones are notifiable, which ones are major, and so on. That's going to take a bit of governance and a bit of.
Have you defined what those are?
They are defined, yeah. They are defined in the majors and notifiable and consequential. There's quite a few definitions. Yeah, but the definitions are out there, George. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Down to asset type or product type.
Any change has to be recorded, but whether you tell the regulator or not, or get approval from the regulator, depends on its impact.
Yeah.
And so apparently, it's the first document that the regulator is going to ask for if they have ever visited site. On an HRB site, they would ask to see the change control log before they see anything.
Yeah. So those notifiable ones, is that relatively straightforward for me to find, do you think?
Yeah, it is. In fact, I was working on it earlier, so I can.
That'd be fantastic.
Pop it in the chat. Change control. I'll send you something on change control.
Thank you.
No worries.
Is there any evidence out there at the moment of organisations, clients, contractors doing this well, and where there isn't a need for change control, i.e. there's been no change? Because I'm conscious that change control is necessary, but sometimes people think, well, we haven't changed anything, so we don't need to get into the nitty-gritty of that.
Would love to work on a project where there's been no change. It's just never happened.
No, I appreciate that. I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit because I know there's always change, but some products don't necessarily. You made the point earlier about some things are not specified. So in which case, then there is no change in a kind of in the sense that there's information between the differences between the two. So if somebody just says to the merchant, "Send me X, Y, Z," where's that information? Do we have evidence at the moment of organisations capturing that information? What does it look like?
Requisitions, I'd imagine. Requisitions and orders and delivery notes.
Yeah, and my experience of that is that that's done in many different formats. From structured data on a ERP system to an email, which is not even done in a structured way. But I just wondered, I'd just be interested to see a best practice example, if it exists.
Yeah, I'm sure it might be worth asking the merchants on that one, Phil. Would have thought.
I have done. I'm still waiting. But the problem is that, you know, and I suppose to be fair to the merchants, because they're looking after their interests, is they'll process anything. You could send them a fax or a post-it note or scribble it on a fag packet. They would send you. They're under no obligation to push back and say, I'm sorry, that's not structured data. We're not supplying it. They will literally put it on the van that day because they want the invoice paying. So where's the governance or the emphasis on the merchant to do the right thing?
Great point. There's great point. Don't have the answer on that one.
Okay, so like I say, I'm going to have to jump in a second because I've got a client meeting.
No problem.
Is there anything, Martin, that you'd like us to be looking at doing?
Sure.
I know I've just thrown that at you.
No, I don't think so, George. Nothing jumps out at the moment. I think everybody's in the same position. Everybody's getting used to this. Everybody's dealing with it to varying degrees of success. The proof will come in the pudding, won't it?
I think next week, Richard was just saying that we've got almost 200 people already signed up for the session next week.
Yeah.
So we might get some good questions coming out of that.
Yeah, I think honestly think the regulator's in the same place as everybody else, trying to understand it.
Yeah.
And I think the appetite for working in that sector, the high risk building sector, is restricted, limited.
Yes.
I don't think there is an appetite for it, certainly from developers and designers and contractors. So when the first few start stumbling through, they're going to have a lot of eyes on it.
Yes, absolutely. And the targets for building more homes.
Yeah, I just don't think there'll be anything more than 17 meters in the air.
Yeah.
So they're not high risk. I think people are going to avoid it like the plague, quite frankly.
17.8.
You wouldn't, would you? You wouldn't want to be the first.
But the point is, it's not just about the height of the building, is it? Because if a lot of them are the Fire Safety Act information, the Fire Safety Act, that's relevant to
all buildings.
My understanding, all buildings
and all building regs as well. We're all supposed to comply with all building regs, but 90% of what people are talking about is high risk stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
And I don't think that'll get properly sorted and understood until 2 or 3 years through people having done them.
Sure. Good. Okay. Well, we'll catch up hopefully next week or what. Are you going to the Homes exhibition? I imagine not. It's not really your thing, is it?
It's not, and I'm not. No, we are unbelievably busy at the moment. So I don't have days for exhibitions at the moment.
It's tricky. So what are your big things at the moment?
It's just workload.
Yeah.
Legacy issues and not enough people to do the work we need to do.
Yeah, good. Okay. Right. I'll speak to you soon.
Okay, then.
I'll follow up with a suggestion in terms of maybe speaking with your colleagues, if that's okay.
By all means. I think you might be better asking others.
Okay.
You might be disappointed that they don't know any more than what I've passed on, which wasn't a lot, I acknowledge.
That's all right, Martin. Thank you.
No worries at all.
Cheers.
Okay. Speak soon, guys.
Thank you. Take care.
Cheers.